Welcome back, and if you've been watching or just joined us, we're talking energy today, and we have the Minister of Energy with the acting DG, and we've also got the Deputy Minister and also the Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources in the audience, and we'll be chatting to them in a short while, just to get their views as well as their contributions to this energy story unfolds. But let's go straight to our tables and start with Perry Moodley, who's on table 16, to get a question from Perry. Perry, where are you?
Morning, Peter. Esteemed Minister and A-team, it was interesting to note that you mentioned you have the mandate to remove any impediments to reach your goals. Minister, I just want to remind you that we've heard there's 14 million homes that do not have power. What are plans being made for in the rural areas, particularly, who seem to be a forgotten lot? Logistically, it's impossible to get electricity to these areas. Your views on this, please.
Okay, Minister, DG.
The challenges we had in the past was that, as we said, Eskom straddles two portfolios, and the synergy between the Department of Public Enterprises and the Department of Energy is absolutely crucial for our service delivery. A seamless delivery between national, provincial, and local government is also essential. The cost of electricity is too exorbitant, and electricity supply, transmission has not become any cheaper. So our first objective is to have efficiency, energy efficiency, and to use efficiency as a foundation for us to spread the resource more effectively. Rural areas are not going to have electricity overnight, and that is a challenge. But they would have an energy mix, and that energy mix is what we're debating now. The Director General would be able to tell you more about the Energy Master Plan. And the Energy Master Plan certainly focuses on providing an energy mix, not electricity alone, to the rural areas.
DG, very briefly.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. I think the issue in rural households is that we've got to provide an energy solution. And that energy solution is not necessarily grid electricity. One area that we've done very well actually in this past financial year in terms of targets is electrification of households. We've actually exceeded the targets, and when the annual report comes out, I think people will see that even in rural households, we've actually gone further. What needs to happen is that people need to know that we have to focus on off-grid electrification. It's not necessary for everyone to be connected to the grid as long as the home can be energized, and there are technologies to do that.
All right. I know Deputy Minister would like to add a few words there. Ambassador Majola.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everybody. I think the Minister and the DG have actually set out the broad framework, and I'm glad this question of electrification has come up, because among the key challenges that we are looking at, and it relates maybe to some of the obstacles, the issue of policy certainty is one of the key things we'll be looking at. So when Minister was speaking about the fact that we're going to have targets and dates, we will be talking to you about that, but we're still going to go through our budget vote, and we'll come back to some of those issues because we think it's a bit premature today. But the issue of policy certainty is key. Policy certainty is also going to guide how our master plan will roll out, because today we all have the NDP, as the Minister has said. If the NDP says in 30 years' time this is where the economy is, what kind of energy do we need? We need to look at our country. We're a water-scarce country, so unfortunately we're not going to have huge hydro dams, which would have been ideal for us because then we would be meeting our challenges in terms of protecting our environment. Right now, our main source of energy is coal, and that is actually going against some of our targets in terms of cleaning the environment. One of the things I'm hoping partners will be able to come to us is to say, this is as far as we've gone in terms of research, because coal is a national asset. We need to find a way to utilize it in a clean manner. So we would be expecting industry to come on board and say, we can continue using fuel, but this is how we can clean it. We can clean it. So that's one source. The other source we're looking at and saying, well, there's that huge potential of Inga. As we said, we're looking at ratifying the treaty, which will be covered by the bilateral agreement, and we need to begin work there. That's a project that contributes tremendously to regional integration. That power is not going to jump over those, it has to go through a number of countries. That means we're going to be electrifying not only South Africa, but the countries through which this is going to be coming through, as well as, of course, the DRC. In terms of the electrification of households, as the DJ said, that's been hugely successful. The education part, I think, is what is lacking, because there are some people who are saying, why am I not on the grid like the other one? And that understanding of the fact that you need to use different sources because you need to look at the economies. If you have a household 5 kilometers away, which is isolated, and you have to bring that and connect it to the grid, it actually doesn't make economic sense. But maybe you can set up some solar panels and you'll get energy. So it's about people getting to understand that you will have to use different sources for that. Some people have already said to me, but forget all those things, we've got lots of sun, why don't we just put panels? If we were to only look at powering our economy through solar, we need to cover the country. Just have solar panels all over the country. That's the kind of energy we are needing. The question of nuclear comes into that. Obviously, it's going to be absolutely imperative that issues of safety, the environment are looked at. But we don't have the luxury of saying we will not go via nuclear. And we have the advantage that actually we still have nuclear in this country, and we've had it for a long while, and we've been managing it, and no one has said, but what are the issues? So I think the communication and the education is clearly one of the key challenges, because there are lots of successes, but maybe the communication isn't going. The IPP program is a huge success in the renewable, and we'll be looking at it in other sectors as well, because we need the private sector.
Deputy Minister, thank you very much indeed. In fact, you've raised an interesting point. That question from Anesh Ramatha on table 14 would like to address, and perhaps this might have been a conversation all by itself. Anesh, where are you?
Hi, Peter.
Yes.
I think Deputy Minister sort of answered the question around the development around nuclear power in South Africa.
Thank you. Nuclear energy is not the elephant in the room. There is an agreement that, as you heard in the President's State of the Nation address, that we will focus some of our energies on nuclear energy. Our DDG is, yeah. We have the experts.
Okay, DDG, perhaps you can address a few things with this, because last time I had a conversation with an energy minister, some assurances were made about an announcement in terms of when the nuclear build process is going to be announced and when it's going to begin. So perhaps you can give us a little bit of a background on that. Where are we with that? And this question that's been raised, where are we in terms of energy mix? Just this week, France's energy minister has introduced a new energy plan, one that sees a reduction in the use of nuclear. And I'm just wondering, if that's the future of the world, shouldn't we be thinking about that already?
Thank you very much, Peter, and Minister and Deputy Minister and Acting DG. With regard to the issue of the nuclear, I'd like to provide a bit of assurance in terms of the questions that were raised by the Deputy Minister that says we are going to go forward with nuclear as a country, but there are certain matters that needs to be addressed in terms of the safety, in terms of environmental issues, in terms of the funding strategy. With regard to the safety aspect of nuclear, I'd like to assure the country that we have had a nuclear power station in the form of a Quebec nuclear power station that has operated safely for more than 30 years. And this nuclear power station is in the Western Cape, and it generates electricity to cover most of the Western Cape area. We also have, as a country, we are a member state to the International Atomic Energy Agency. Through that, we are required to comply with the very stringent safety measures that are required for the nuclear energy. And in the country, we've got what is called the National Nuclear Regulator, which is a regulator that looks after the protection of the people, the environment, and the entire safety aspect of utilization of the nuclear energy. And in that regard, safety is assured. I also need to mention, with regard to the issues related to matters that are always raised around nuclear, as to how are we looking after the radioactive waste that is generated from utilization of this nuclear technology. I'd like to assure the country that as a country, we've got a national radioactive waste disposal site, which is called the Valput, located in the Northern Cape. And this site is capable, and all over these years, as we are using the nuclear technology, is capable of dealing with matters of radioactive waste, dealing with low and intermediate waste that is generated from our nuclear power plants. And also, I need to mention that as part of the history and as part of the capability that as a country we have of safe operation of the nuclear facilities, we also have got NEXA, that it's got a Safari 1 research reactor. And this reactor has been in operation for more than 40 years, and it's been operated safely. And so in that context, I'd like to bring an assurance that as a country, we've got capability, we've got experience, we've got the resources that have been able to operate our nuclear facilities safely. We also have the mining area that is using the minerals, and some of the minerals generate radioactive material. And there is also the National Nuclear Regulator that provides assurance in terms of the safety in those areas.
I think you can just realize that he's very passionate about this topic. And we'll allow an opportunity for you to engage with him as well at the later stage.
All right. Okay. So, look, we can keep our plants safe, we can keep our procedures safe, but I get concerned when I pick up a newspaper and I read about 2 men last year trying to sell enriched uranium, and they got caught in Durban somewhere. Are we certain that this stuff isn't being peddled? Everyone's focused on drugs, but it's perhaps far more dangerous that people can walk around with a kilogram of enriched uranium.
Well, I think if I can just address that, clearly that that enriched uranium, if that is reported, did not come from one of our facilities. In as far as enriched uranium in our facilities, one, we have constant monitoring. We have security, which we have beefed up all, throughout the years. And I think we'll have to then investigate as to where the source was. Was it really enriched uranium? Because that would have been quite an incident, because you could also have refined uranium, which then comes from the mining sector, which perhaps found its way to...
Why is the world using less nuclear as time passes, and we're looking to increase the use of nuclear?
Well, I think there is an increased use of nuclear energy, for example, in the East, in China. There is increased use. India is looking to increase as well. South Korea, the nuclear use has increased. I mean, you've had in the UK, for example, recently, a rollout of one of the biggest programs in the world. And I think that what is very interesting is that some of the people involved in that rollout of the UK nuclear program are people who used to work in our own program. So that demonstrates that, sometimes we underestimate the capacity that we have in this country.
All right. Okay. Table number 3, Judy Nokwedi. I don't know if your question's been answered, but perhaps we can get a microphone to you. I know this is an industry you know well.
Yes, and I was hoping we'd move to gas, but whilst we're still on nuclear, this may be then the last nuclear question. Welcome to the 2 madams. It's really interesting to have many madams around. And you're in Gauteng, and I was hoping you were going to talk about the billing crisis. We certainly know how much electricity we use. It's about the bills we receive for that electricity. But my question really has been answered in a way. The success of a nuclear rollout program hinges on public participation and public education. And that is the global experience. And I guess it's a question of when do we embark on that national public participation and public dialogue process to allay all the fears that are constantly cropping up. Let's take South Africa with us as we engage on the subject. Thank you.
All right. So when you've talked about participation.
We certainly realize that it's a paradigm shift we need to make as a nation. And we're not going to make a paradigm shift if we do not communicate very well. And one of our weaknesses, you asked if there would be a success story. One of our weaknesses has been lack of effective communication. And half of the battle would have already been won if we allowed for that public participation and stakeholder participation, as well as communication between us and the people we serve. Mr. Apani is also dying to answer as well. Yes, he's shocked.
No, Minister, I actually didn't have a comment. I think you've done excellently in covering the issues with it. I think DM has preempted some of these questions and they have been addressed. But I think the point about stakeholder engagement is very central to our planning process and our administrative actions that we do take. So we take that seriously and we'll engage.
All right.
Deputy Minister Oliphant is also dying to come in about a bit of the minerals.
No, thank you very much, Minister. And clearly there is no free breakfast here. Let me just talk on 2 issues. Clearly we here as partners in the government that I think should be seamless. Because to generate energy, you need a lot of the production that we, out of the mining industry. So our commitment, like the new minister has said, is that we must just ensure that we fast track the issues of regulations in the mining so that people can start producing. But one important question that was asked earlier was about rural electrification. And I must say that the private sector has been hard at work in terms of research for clean energy, including gasification of coal as one aspect, but most importantly, there's been the aspect of hydrogen and fuel cells. Out of platinum, you can actually produce a lot of energy. So in August this year, we'll be rolling out one of the first trials of rural electrification where home generation technology is used, using platinum as a source to ensure that we power the rural areas. So it's just one of those. And it's actually very big. For instance, in Japan, a lot of technology has gone into it. The manufacturing thereof is very exciting for job creation and so on and so on. So we're very excited going forward. Like the minister said, there are a lot of low-hanging fruit that we must look into, including the fired power stations that might be on stream very soon. And maybe I should leave it at that for now.
Okay.
I've earned my breakfast.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Oliphant. Gavin Greenberg says shale gas is not the answer for energy in South Africa. Once it's depleted, we are left with pollution. What do we say to Gavin Greenberg? Because just this week, Deputy President Ramaphosa says that shale gas could be a game changer.
Okay, if I may, Minister, I think there are two things. One is that there is offshore gas that we should not forget in our country, and there is huge potential there. Secondly, shale gas, clearly, when it is exploited, we have to ensure that we have stringent regulation. And the team that has been put together by government, has got environmental affairs, water affairs, who are supposed to be the stewards for environmental as well as water management issues. I don't believe that, if we do this and follow international best practice, we will be in a worse off position, because there is a resource that is there. First of all, what we need to do is to find out the extent of that resource. I think that's the first thing that led by the Department of Mineral Resources. Then after that, we then have to find ways of actually utilizing that resource, perhaps at source, instead of transporting it elsewhere.
Are we working from the basis that if the environmental studies suggest that it's not safe, you're going to call it off completely, or are we working from the premise that we've got to use it, let's find a safe way of doing it?
Well, I think the approach that we have is that let us find a safe way of actually exploiting what we have. But I think the most important part, one for us now, is to make sure that we develop the necessary skills, and this is, of course, going hand in hand with determining the extent of the resource. Because if we find through the drilling processes that actually it's not to the extent that we thought there was, then perhaps that then changes the picture.
We have Mr. Tobajan. He's also, they're all itching to answer.
You've got your team on the
Yes,
floor.
they are seriously going to work for their money today.
Minister, you have done a wonderful job today in answering. But a few comments that I'll make is, one is that when we look at the low-hanging fruits, I think our colleagues have indicated that we should also look at issues of gas. Importation of gas is another area that we need to get gas into the country to be able to provide immediately to the households for cooking, for space heating, and all those related issues. There were comments on nuclear. I think people want to know where we are going forward. Is that the National NNECC, which is the committee that's going to be looking at the energy in general, and nuclear in particular, will be looking at these plans that are going to be developed by the department and the minister and the deputy minister, and then make a decision on how to roll them out going forward. And then the last comment that I have is, yes, nuclear may appear that it is going down. If you take France and you hear that there's a statement being released that there's going to be more renewable energies, you look at the background against which France is saying that we have been too much leaning on nuclear. We need to look at other resources to bring them in. We need to look at renewable energies and all those related issues. But in general, nuclear's resurgence is on the uprise against the background that we have seen that we have got now much more safer nuclear power plants. There are safer practices that are being used. And even commercially, financially, it is coming to become competitive with the rest of the others. For us as South Africa, looking at nuclear as a part and parcel of our mix is very crucial, as the DM has indicated, that we need to balance not only the fact that we're using coal. Coal does pollute. We have got environmental impact issues that we need to manage. Renewables do help, but does not cover the full spectrum, and therefore we need to look at nuclear as well as part and parcel of the full mix. You need a full mixed basket, not one dependency, but a full mix. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much indeed. It'll be interesting to see what role France does play, because they're reducing in their country, but I suspect that they'll be coming to South Africa once the nuclear build story starts here. So we'll see. Alistair Rogers is on table number 2. Alistair Rogers, table number 2.
Thank you. Minister, it's Alistair Davids from Postmasburg in the Northern Cape. I would like to say that the people of Postmasburg of Tsansabane are very happy about the appointment of the minister. We have seen the good work that the minister have done in agriculture, and we hope that the minister will do the same with regard to energy. And the reason why they are saying this is I just want to give 2 examples. In Postmasburg, we have 2 power plants that are independent power producers are busy with now. The Lesedi power plant and Jasper. With the Lesedi power plant, there is no involvement of local black business from the Tsansabane municipal area. The IPPs are claiming that their economic development obligations are only going to kick in after the construction period. So we want the minister to intervene on behalf of local black business during the construction period. At Lesedi, the only projects that we got was one contractor who erected a signboard, and the second one was to transport people from the site that is 30 kilometers away to town. That's the only 2 opportunities that black business got from that Lesedi power plant. With Jasper, only one of 1.2 million. And that is our problem, that during the construction phase, the IPPs is only concerned about connecting to the grid. They don't worry about empowering the locals in the host communities. And then they use a lot of definitions, like in the mining, where they talk about local, localized, BE, empowered. But those definitions, Deputy Minister Olifant, we can't relate to those definitions in the mining sector. They comply with the charter, they exceed the targets in the mining charter. But if you ask them, what is the impact of those compliance? And then there's zero. So you ask the minister, please intervene on behalf of local black businesses in the local communities to ensure that we at least get, there's that part criminals or great. Van die project af as a black minister.
We absolutely agree. And in the introductory remarks I made this morning, I spoke about local content, the empowerment of SMMEs, and the empowerment of black businesses. I think those are the reasons why I've been unpopular in the past and controversial in the past. But I'm passionate about empowering black businesses wherever I've been. I have a track record of empowering black businesses, and I'll continue doing so. The expertise is in South Africa. We all need to sing from the same page, and that's the difference. If you just listen to the expertise in the room, then we don't need to import all that much expertise. It's easier. We need to harness the energy that's in this room.
All right. What I'm going to ask is from your tables, he's taken up all your time now, so everybody that follows, you've got literally about 20 seconds to ask your question, and I'm going to get our guests to answer very shortly. I want to get through as many of these as possible. So, table 37, Notolo Mbana, please, if you could stand up. Let's get through your question, but please be quick with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I think my question was partly answered by the Deputy Minister, because my concern was mostly legislation continues to be a barrier in intra-regional trade, because I saw quite a number of opportunities, especially in renewables, in the other countries in the region. But I'm still concerned that the pace at which reform in legislation is going is killing small business. Thank you.
All right, Deputy Minister, can you respond very quickly? When will we get a point where policy certainty is there? Do you have a timeline that you can commit to?
I think some of it would be out of my hands, because once it reaches Parliament and the consultation processes, but definitely in the electricity, in the gas, everything, we are looking at making sure that in the coming months, before the end of this year, we would want all that to be completed, because it has an impact in terms of how we roll out all these issues, and we need to know what component of which energy, from where, and how to do it. So it's important for us and not only for the sector. And maybe just brief you on the issue of local content. The challenge we have had so far in a number of these things is that we do not produce some of these components locally. So we've had some of our DFIs looking at issues around solar panels being produced in South Africa and those kind of things. And the question of education and communication is key again, because there is a perception that the only thing that pollutes is coal. All these technologies do pollute, because you've got to produce the panels, you've got to mine, how do you dispose of them? So we need to understand how we manage that. It's the issue around management that's the challenge. And that's what we need to come to a common understanding.
All right, Deputy Minister Oliphant.
No, thank you very much. Just to deal with two issues, Peter, quickly. One on the shale gas. Shale gas, we are going to do it. We're quite resolute about it. It's a game changer for South Africa, and we must also appreciate the resources that we have in the country. Hydraulic fracturing is happening all over the country. The United States of America is quite big on it. You can see that the economy is booming there, and they've got practices. They've been doing it over a long time. So if you just go back to, for instance, Mosgas, which is Petro SA now, to get Mosgas to where it was, they just use what they call 1 TCF, 1 trillion cubic feet. Now, in our country, we've got more than 50 trillion cubic feet already that we know of, and inferred is 485. So it means it is a game changer. We are going to do it, and so on and so on. So, and the issue is about the regulations, the communication which is taking place, and the education. But maybe just two last issues. One, you would recall that the mining transformation is going to take place. We're quite determined about it. 2014 was the deadline, and by the end of the year, you'll see changes as it happens in terms of local empowerment, etc., etc. One of the issues that we're asking South Africans to do is to be combat ready. It's not to sit there and think that things will come. You must also be there to take advantage of procurement and all that. Beneficiation is the anchor program of this government. And our interest is to ensure that there is energy, enough energy, to be able to ensure that we do the beneficiation for our minerals. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Let's go straight to Mike Sibia, table 27. Mike Sibia, table 27.
My question was just how do we then access information directly to the Minister's office? Because, like, for example, as companies working with the power generation companies with Cummins, we've just done projects in Mozambique because they've got gas. But now, once we know the issues around gas, how it is imported to South Africa and all of that, surely we can work out solutions. But then, access to information and who can we liaise with so that we can then come out and see if we can work something out with the ministers. Access to information.
It is a problem we identified in the first week because I couldn't get access to information in my own department. And Zodo, I'm going to ask you to stand so that you can introduce yourself. We brought in a team of communicators. They're beautiful, so I'm sure you'd want to communicate with people who are beautiful. You may sit down. You may tell people how passionate I am about the communication, improving our communication.
Okay, thank you, Minister. In fact, my name is Joemat-Pettersson. I work with the Minister, and I give support also to the Deputy Minister, Ms. Thembi Majola. I work with a team of experts in the department. I'm not the expert, but I work with lots of experts. I work with Gareth Bazaden-Holt, whom I'm going to ask that he stands because he's responsible for stakeholder relations. And some of this information you will get from Gareth Bazaden-Holt. But I also work with the communications team, which is seated on table 4, I think. Lerato Nzoko, Johannes, I think I saw them there. They are responsible for accessing information within the department. They manage the website in the department, and also they generate information for you from the respective DDGs. So we are at your service. The Minister has given us, she calls it matching orders. She has given us a stringent line of instruction for us to develop a serious communication strategy, which we are going to give meat to the bones, and we are going to ensure that as this information does reach to the very end of every part of our country. Thank you, Minister.
Okay, Mike Sibia, table number 7 is where you're going to have breakfast. Okay, she's waiting.
And the beautiful Lerato is at table. Lerato, they haven't seen you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, table number 19, Dumisani Nkosi. Table 19, and I think as the microphone goes to Dumisani, we've got one from Dibaneng Sarajo who says, I have replaced both my electric stove with a gas stove and geyser with solar geyser. Where do I go for rebates? I don't know. But I think it kind of links to Dumisani's question.
Yes.
Dumisani, table 19.
Minister, my question is, what is the role, or are there any measures that the department will be enforcing on large corporates and companies? Because to me, they're the biggest consumers of electricity in regards to making sure that they have rooftop solar panels to be able to cut down on electricity.
Okay, so how do we force companies to join the party, as it were, in terms of efficiency, using panels and making our buildings even more energy efficient? And at the same time, how do we incentivize ordinary consumers to be more efficient, as this woman has done?
Okay, thanks, Minister and Peter. I think the issue is, first of all, demonstrating to every South African that it makes sense to be more energy efficient. So the approach would be one of, saying to business, it makes business sense for you, for example, to install a rooftop solar panel. Now that is the work that, in my view, has got to be done, led by the National Efficiency Agency, which falls under SANEDI, which is the South African National Energy Development Institute. Now, I think that there is a vehicle that has been created by statute to drive energy efficiency in this country. And I think it's time now that we start encouraging the Energy Efficiency Agency to actually make sure that there are results coming out of their programs. They have had some successes, but I think that that needs to be accelerated now.
What about the ordinary consumer? How can we incentivize them to switch? Because there is a bit of a cost initially, and yes, they'll make savings downstream, but can't we incentivize them?
Well, I think the one thing that we have done is through the solar water heating program. I think that on its own, what government is doing in the rollout of solar water heaters is actually going to make an impact, because one, the installation, is going to, pay the consumer back. So that on its own is an incentive. But I think the other issue is that we've got to look at ways of lowering the cost of LPG in this country, the petroleum gas. I think that is another challenge that we are going to be seized with, and that is going to involve basically creating the necessary infrastructure for storage, because that's where basically most of the costs come from.
All right, Minister, is there no way to punish companies who, I drive around at night and I see these lights on in offices, in these office complexes, and how do we incentivize people to switch off the lights at home if companies can't be bothered to do that?
You didn't want me to be unpopular today. So definitely we are, that is one of the questions. Those are common questions that we're asking. But we're not going to be able to just set policy through thumb-sucking. And a vigorous policy shift would entail, energy efficiency. But as the DG said, we have to look at doing things differently as a country.
Okay. Brian Day, table 37, if you could be brief. Brian Day, table 37.
Thank you very much, Peter. And to the Minister, it's great to hear the sense of collaboration between government and business. I think we can really embrace that from business's side. My question was around a comprehensive legislative program, particularly in the power sector. The Electricity Regulation Act of 2006 doesn't adequately portray what is in the white paper from 1998 or in the NDP, which is the blueprint for government and which is well supported by all sectors of business. What is your plan for a comprehensive legislative reform and not just a piecemeal approach to getting certain programs going, as excellent as those programs have been? Thank you.
The overarching policy document will be the Energy Master Plan. And where there's if there's gaps in that plan, we welcome comments and contributions from particularly the private sector. We know that in this area, we cannot work as a public sector in isolation with the private sector. And the Energy Master Plan has to reflect the National Development Plan and has to reflect the future. So passing legislation could be quite a cumbersome process in this country. My experience was that with one particular act in my past portfolio, it took us more than a year to get the act through Parliament. So that type of processes have to be addressed, and winning the hearts and minds of the country is going to be particularly important, because stakeholders can actually frustrate the processes of passing legislation by opposing that legislation for a very long time. So once we have a common purpose and a common goal, we'll be able to get policy certainty, and which is what we need as a country and which is what we need as a sector. I'm not asking for people not to object or criticize what it is we are doing. If you do not want criticism, then you shouldn't be in the business of energy. People are opposed, there are people are opposed to any particular form of energy. So yes, we do have diverse views, but if we want comprehensive legislation and policy, then we need to come to the party and support what it is. And where we do differ, we need to articulate those differences, but know that there's a particular time frame to differ.
All right.
We cannot differ forever.
Okay, table number 5, Johan van der Berg. Table number 5, if you can be quick with your question, and I'll get a quick response as well.
I can be very quick. Good morning from the Wind Energy Association. Minister, my question is whether the government is excited about the 5 billion plus rand that the wind industry will be investing into communities in the next 20 years. Thank you.
That isn't a question, that's a wonderful statement which deserves a round of applause.
Do we have any idea what portion of the energy mix wind will be? Because I know that there are countries, Ethiopia for example, they're really going full steam ahead with this. Denmark I think is up to 30%. Where are we going to be with wind in South Africa?
Well, I think in terms of the plan that we have currently, renewable energy will contribute to the new generation 42%.
Okay.
And of that, you know, it all depends in terms of the progress that is made on wind. The breakdown, I think, is there in the IRP as to what the aspiration is. But we are aiming for 42% renewables, and I think all indications are that we will get to that target before the NDP deadline of 2030. Yeah.
Regicibia, table 30. We haven't talked about this area before today, not much. Table 30, Regicibia.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Honorable Minister. I must say I'm actually asking this question now to you as the third minister, and we still haven't really heard clear answers to it. Maybe just to contextualize it, it is in the context of small businesses. I'm standing here as the CEO of your Retailers Association. I'm representing small businesses, so I am the voice of the voiceless. And the context really is, in the country's agenda, we have seen that small businesses are a priority. And the other context to this question is the whole issue of meaningful transformation. We currently are aware that in the petroleum sector, the sharing of profits is left between the small businesses, who are fuel retailers, and the big businesses, who are the oil companies. And we know that there is no balance of power. And the situation as we stand is that more and more there is erosion of the profitability of the small business. So we are asking a question in saying, if we hear the words radical transformation, the expectations is that we should also be seeing radical interventions. So our question is, the department is aware of these imbalances in power in the sharing of businesses, of the margins, which is working against the sustainability of small businesses. So we are very concerned that while the government is talking about prioritizing the growth of small businesses, yet we are not looking into how do we sustain the existing businesses in our sector. So the question, Minister, is what is the radical intervention plan that the department is going to put into place to ensure
SMEs.
that there is sustainability of small businesses?
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so very brief answer to that. SMME is a big concern.
We have heard the score. Our priority is to address unemployment, inequality, and poverty. And addressing inequality is precisely bridging the gap between the small businesses and those who are the larger businesses, who are going to be reluctant to share resources, as we know. So radical socio-economic transformation is going to be not doing things differently only, but also doing things smarter. We are not going to be able to answer that question adequately here. So an intensive session with SMMEs from across the country will have to happen within the first 100 days, in which you have a platform to speak to us and we have a platform to address the challenges that you face. We're not going to be able to answer it in 2 seconds.
I think his concern is that these conversations have happened before. They've raised these issues. Are you saying that you've drawn a line in the sand?
Absolutely.
And from this moment on, things will get addressed?
We are beyond speaking. We are now looking for action, and that action has to be decided upon collectively.
Okay. Sergey Ilin, table 7. Sergey Ilin.
Ministers, thank you so much for your very comprehensive information which was done before. I have only one question. Would you please more concretize when IRP for coal baseload power plant will be released?
So, when will this RFP for coal-based be released?
Well, I think that question, I'd like to ask Mr. Apane to perhaps deal with that. And there's a reason for that. What we've done in the department with the IPP program and why it's been so successful, we've ring-fenced.
Okay, you've got 30 seconds to answer that question. Perhaps that's a good thing, I'm not sure.
Watch the press next weekend.
Okay, so big release next week. Did you hear that, Sergey? There you go, next week. So, nuclear build announcement, when's that going to happen?
But you want definite time frames?
Well, Minister Ben Martin said that in April, that within 2 months we'll have a story. 2 months has passed.
I take responsibility for the 2 months that have passed.
And?
And hope to break the record.
And?
And have it out sooner.
So we don't know for certain yet when.
I'm a politician, I don't want to be fired on air.
I think, let me just say that we need to do a state of readiness assessment.
Okay.
First.
All right.
And that is what
I'm going to have to wrap it there, but thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for Minister Joemat-Pettersson and DG, Mr. Maqubela. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us.